It's finally here, the 2022 NFL Draft, a night where franchises' fortunes can change forever, and those fortunes are going to look certainly one way today and probably 120% different 5, 10 years down the road. Well, Brendan Boylan here with my buddy Bob Rose, Saints News Network, 2022 NFL Draft Show. And Bob, before we went live, we were talking about we haven't done a live show together since the end of the regular season. So it's been, 4 or 5 months since we've been on the air doing a show together. So happy to see you. I'm sure as this can throughout the evening, we'll have comments and different people popping in that you and I are very familiar with. And we do want to hear from you guys. You know, this is a long night, and Bob and I are certainly going to take some breaks throughout it. But we want to connect with you guys. We want to get your opinions, and we want to talk some of that stuff out because it's a beautiful day, Bob. There's 2 million mock drafts. I'm just coming up with a number, but that sounds right. There's 2 million mock drafts that go out every year. Nobody knows what's going on, and you and I have as best a guess of anybody what's going to happen. We're also going to have John Hendricks. He's actually at the New Orleans Saints facility down there in Metairie. He's going to pop in at some point today along with Kyle T. Mosley, who's doing some double duty for you Pelicans fans that are concerned about the NBA playoffs. Make sure you go to Pelican Scoop and check them out. But now that I've covered all the bases, Bob, my friend, how are you? Happy to see you. Happy to have you back. It's weird going a couple months without your live streaming buddy.
Hey, Brendan, I've been doing pretty well. Crazy busy. It is our busiest time of year. In case fans don't know that, it's way busier now than what it is during the season. But it is good to see you too. And you're right. It's been 4 or 5 months. It feels like 4 or 5 years. Since we've done anything like this. It feels to me like the longest off season in New Orleans Saints history. But it's finally coming to a culmination. With a very controversial 2022 NFL draft. And just before we went live, the Jacksonville Jaguars made their first, the number 1 overall pick as defensive end Trayvon Walker. And the Detroit Lions just followed up with another edge, Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. So that's a couple of the top edge rushers off the board. Sort of bad news for New Orleans Saints fans, in my opinion, because, good news, bad news situation. I don't think there's any way the Saints take an edge rusher early. It's probably the deepest position on the team. With so much speculation about will they or won't they pick a quarterback, will they finally get a wide receiver in the first round after so many years of bypassing them? How about an offensive tackle? Your new coach, Dennis Allen, is very much a defensive guy, which we saw that play out during free agency. Do they go best available defensive player? Those are just a few of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. You guys will have Brandon and I throughout the duration tonight. I like he said, on and off the air, tomorrow and to wrap things up on Saturday. But we'll have John Hendricks checking in from Saints facility. The incredibly busy professional juggler Kyle Mosley will be checking in. I'll also have Alan Ulrich, one of my co-hosts on Tuesdays Under the Dome podcast. But we really do. We want to hear from you guys too. What kind of speculation you have. For those of you that have been following our articles and videos, throughout, not only the regular season and off season, we do truly love you for the support. But this is kind of your time to shine. And chime in on what you think about our mock picks or our analysts analysis and your own analysis too. We really do want to hear. And do not be surprised if we offer the invitation every now and then. I don't know about tonight, but offer the invitation to come on the air and join us too. Get your face on TV.
Hey, we'd love to do it. We'd love to absolutely hear from some of you guys and be able to do something a little different. Not every day do we get to have some of our readers and loyal supporters come on and chat with us in a setting like this. So we definitely want to do that with you guys today. Bob, you mentioned the 2 edge rushers right off the top. I think, like you said, edge is not necessarily an area of particular strong need, particularly tonight for New Orleans. However, I've seen plenty of mocks that have defensive tackles linked to the Saints in round number 1. And there was some speculation this morning of New Orleans potentially packaging 16 and 19 and moving up into the draft. If you had to give me a percentage, what percentage chance does that happen? And if that happens, who do you think the Saints are looking at?
Well, first of all, during the regular season, you always like to use the term "angry Bob." When the Saints are playing poorly, if the Saints package these 2 first-round picks to move up, you're gonna see homicidally infuriated Bob, because I will take that to a new level. If that happens, and I don't think it will, but if that happens, I give it maybe a 10% chance or less. I hope to God it's not a quarterback, but I'd be afraid that that's what they do. Because first of all, and I know I had a lot of people coming at me all off season and in my mock drafts, for mocking, 2 different quarterbacks in my 2 mock drafts to the Saints at pick number 19. But listen, I think New Orleans made this deal with Philadelphia to pick up another first-round choice, specifically eyeing a quarterback. And I'd be afraid. I could make sense behind it for so many reasons, and we'll get into those as we near the Saints picks. But what I cannot fathom the logic of is packaging those 2 picks to move up and get a quarterback. First of all, in my opinion, there is no real 2 or 3 players in this draft that stand out above anybody else. Not enough to move up to get them. And especially so at the quarterback position. I'm one of many people that's been on record as saying this is an average quarterback class at best. There's some developmental prospects there, but nobody that I personally would sell the farm to grab in the first round. But I'd be afraid that if they package the picks and move up, it's probably for a quarterback along the lines of a Malik Willis from Liberty or a Kenny Pickett from Pittsburgh. But again, if they do that, think about the assets that meant that the Saints would be giving up, because you have to throw in the trade with Philadelphia to pick up the 2nd first-round pick in the first place. That means that the Saints are giving up 2 first-round picks, at least, a 2nd-round pick in 2023, and a 3rd-round pick that they packaged this year to get a quarterback. I can't see it happening. And again, I'd hit a new level of infuriation if I do, or if it does.
Well, just to piggyback off of that, the only way I could be okay with New Orleans going and getting a quarterback is if, and big if, Malik Willis were to fall to like 16 or 19. And I say that because he has maybe the biggest upside of almost any prospect in the draft, but he is a developmental guy. He's not a guy that can start day one. And that would be we're going to give the keys to Jameis for a year or 2 and then hand him over to Willis. But I'm also a guy that maybe is too much of a believer in Jameis Winston being a piece for New Orleans, not just for the next 2 years, but moving forward. I think the guy's got a tremendous amount of talent. I think in the 7 games that we saw last season, we saw what he could do for this team. So I'm with you, Bob, and I think we both have shared publicly the disinterest, if you will, of the Saints selecting Kenny Pickett. So I'm with you. I think, if anything, the Saints are going to stay put this evening and hopefully knock out 2 positions of need, because this isn't a team in a full rebuild, but they do need some pieces if they want to compete in the NFC.
Yeah. And before we piggyback off of that, the Houston Texans just made their pick with the number 3 overall selection of the first round. It's cornerback Derek Stingley from Louisiana State. So our first LSU player comes off the board. For you Tiger fans, it's probably going to be the only LSU player selected tonight. But Stingley is an outstanding prospect. But again, that's at a cornerback position that I don't feel the Saints were going to address in the first round, or maybe not even in day 2, because New Orleans has Marshawn Lattimore, of course. Star rookie Paulson Adebo, 3rd-round pick last year, and Bradley Roby, who could start for most teams as your number 3 corner, in addition to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, is one of the best slot corners in the league. But our first LSU player comes off of the board. But yeah, to piggyback what you were saying, listen, I believe that Jameis Winston is the right guy for this offense too. The issue is I don't know if New Orleans believes it. We're going to find out tonight because again, this is the logic behind selecting a quarterback if you're the Saints. They don't necessarily have 100% belief in Jameis Winston long term, and there's some smoke to that fire, because if they did, they probably would have signed him or attempted to sign him for longer than a 2-year deal, and Jameis would have probably been averaging about $25 to $30 million a year. In the tier below what the top paid quarterbacks are. That didn't happen. And with a rookie quarterback, like you said, you have the fortunate capability of sitting a rookie player behind Jameis for a year or two. Now, if Winston develops into a franchise passer or one that they believe in long term, then they can sign Jameis to that long-term extension, and then that rookie quarterback, be it Pickett, Willis, whoever, he becomes a valuable trade commodity. Pick up, a pick or a couple picks in the next 2 years. If Winston falters, or in their eyes falter, they can part with him even as early as next year without too much financial penalty. And that rookie that they drafted this year, would have had a year in the system to learn the system, develop a little bit, and this is most important for NFL teams, a rookie first-round pick. You have that 5th-year option, and that is key, especially now that we've seen quarterback salaries, for even guys like Kirk Cousins, hovering at $35 or $40 million a year. So having a fifth-year option on a rookie quarterback is huge, and for all those reasons, that's why I think that the New Orleans Saints are at the very least eyeing a quarterback with one of these two first-round picks.
I could definitely see that happening. And you laid it out pretty perfectly with having a guy be able to sit, and then you can make maybe one of the most famous guys that sat for a while, end up taking the starting job, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, everybody remembers how that worked. And then still in Green Bay, and we'll see how it plays out, but Jordan Love is still sitting as a backup in Green Bay. Right. Is he going to be a trade asset this year, potentially next year? But with Aaron Rodgers, you never know. He could just decide to hang him up as he pleases. But it's an interesting situation, and you could almost model that, if you will, if the Saints decide to get a quarterback this evening or potentially even tomorrow in round 2.
Yeah, sure. And we saw the San Francisco 49ers do that with Trey Lance, and the Bears do it with Justin Fields as recently as last year. So it's certainly not unheard of. And again, I personally believe in Jameis Winston. I like the guy, and I like what he showed us last year, as you alluded to before. But I do think the quarterback is a viable option for the Saints to go in the first round. Having said that, I think that the position that they absolutely need to come away with is wide receiver. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you brought it up at the start of the show. This is a team that has neglected grabbing a receiver in the first, even if you want to say first 3 rounds, outside of Traquan Smith for years now. And this is a big point too, is you look at what the Saints were able to do this offseason, escape cap hell again, if you will. And they had some money. They still have money to spend if they so please. But what did they not do? They didn't address wide receiver in free agency, which tells me the plan is to address it tonight. Now, the last time the Saints took a receiver in the first round, Bob, your memory is better than mine, more days than not. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Brandon Cooks would have been the last first-round wideout. That was 2014. For reference, I was just graduating high school. So reference for any of you guys, it's been a little bit. It's been a little bit since New Orleans has taken a receiver in the first round. I think you and I are both on the same page looking at our mocks, is absolutely wanting New Orleans to go and grab an Ohio State wideout. And while I think that Wilson will be off the board, Olave has made it very clear, and I wrote a whole article on it. he would love to be in New Orleans, and he already has a great standing relationship with Michael Thomas. So if the board falls that way, I don't see him getting past New Orleans, but also look for a guy in Jameson Williams. The ACL injury may have docked him a couple slots, but he's still one of the top receivers on the board, and I certainly think he could be a cornerstone piece for a franchise.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. The only thing really holding Jameson Williams back is that ACL injury he suffered in the national championship game. We're hearing that his recovery and rehab is coming along beautifully. But the reality is he'll probably miss most or all of training camp, at least on field workouts. And he could miss maybe the first 6 weeks of the season, 6 or 8 weeks of the season on the PUP list. And by the way, the Jets just made the number 4 selection in the first round. They chose cornerback Ahmad Gardner from Cincinnati. So another top-notch cornerback comes off of the board.
I figured Sauce Gardner would be the first corner off the board, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I did too. Now I like Derek Stingley a lot. He'll be a nice fit, for the Houston Texans. But clearly Houston saw something there that they liked, and Stingley a little bit over Gardner. And again, as much as I like those two cornerbacks, even if they were on the board, even if either one were to drop precipitously to the Saints at say 16, I would have been surprised if New Orleans would have pulled that trigger. But yeah, back to Jameson. The thing about Jameson Williams is he has such deep ball capability that even when he steps onto the field and he's learning your system, he is still a threat to take the top off of defense. If nothing else, then be a clear out guy for Michael Thomas, Deontay Hardy, Marquez Callaway, and even Alvin Kamara underneath. Jameson, I actually think that Chris Olave is the best route runner in this class. And because of Jameson Williams' ACL injury, I had Olave as the number 1 wide receiver on my board, just a shade above Jameson. And then I had Garrett Wilson at number 3. The Saints fans, especially those of us that do want them, are praying they pick a wide receiver. That's the position, and those are the 3 names to watch through the first 10, 12, 15 picks. Because this is where the Saints draft board conceivably could go, into a tailspin if those 3 names come off of the board, because then they have if we're right in our predictions and they have those guys pegged as potential, picks at 16, they're going to have to, they're going to have to change gears real fast.
Well, there's one name that you left off your list that some people have as high as being the number 1 receiver taken off the board tonight. And for you betting fans, one of my favorite things to see today was that the hip hop artist Drake actually put a lot of money on his namesake, Drake London, being the first receiver off the board. But what do we think of Drake London out of the University of Southern Cal?
Boom or bust potential, as the saying goes. I think Drake's a good route runner. He's a big physical receiver, which is something to keep in mind because that's who the Saints, at least under Sean Payton, preferred. My issue with Drake is he doesn't have great speed, and he does need to sharpen his brakes. And until that happens, his speed and lack of elusiveness is what could prevent him from getting a lot of separation at the NFL level. He's another Michael Thomas. And the way that he plays the game. Now, if he winds up being another Michael Thomas, what NFL team wouldn't like to have 2 Michael Thomases on their team? But I think the Saints need for this offense and for Jameis Winston a game breaker that's with the ability to take the top off of defense as well as run routes underneath. Drake London checks off one of those boxes, but I'm not so sure the other one.
Well, when is the last time the Saints had a true deep ball threat?
Ted Ginn in 2017. Before that, Brandon Cooks. So yeah.
With that being said, it's been a few years, and obviously, I'm glad that you said Ted Ginn 2017 because you did see a decline over his time in New Orleans. Though I really appreciated what Ted Ginn was able to do for the Saints offense, and there was a lot of people that were questioning his ability to come in and be an impact guy because of the amount of drops he had during his time in Carolina, but he had his best.
I was one of them.
Exactly. Well, I was too. Charlotte's in my backyard, Bob. I mean, it's right here. You could hear the fans from Bank of America booing from my apartment. Um, but nonetheless, he had his highest catch percentage during his NFL career during his time in New Orleans, and he had some big moments for the Saints. But nonetheless, I think that's a big needed thing. I said in an article that I wrote yesterday that came out last night, the Saints were dead last in the league in separation per route by receivers last year. I think you pointed out they're one of just a handful of teams that didn't have a receiver go over 700 or 800 yards last season, and
last 2 years
was a big issue for New Orleans last year. And yes, they were very youthful at the receiver position. I mean, heck, Kevin White was on the roster, a guy that I never thought would see the NFL again. Really glad he got an opportunity. Always fun stories, and it makes for some good write-ups that way. But nonetheless, the Saints are in desperate need of a playmaker at wide receiver. I think both of us are in agreement there, and we talked about a couple guys. But the Saints do have a second pick in the first round. And if they go receiver at 16, where would you like to see the Saints go at 19? I know you mentioned potential grabbing a quarterback.
Before I answer, the Giants are about to make their selection with the 5th overall pick of the first round. Goodell's got some kind of dancing guy behind him. Kayvon Thibodeau, another edge rusher. This one from University of Oregon.
3 edge rushers in the top 5.
Yeah.
How about that?
Sorry, I'm still with you. I'm trying to write as these picks come in too.
That's a tough name to spell out.
It is. It is. A few wrist injuries from playing volleyball. I can't write as fast as I used to either, or as legible.
Well, mine's never been legible, so.
As far as the number 9, and again in this scenario, the Saints are staying put at 16 and 19, and if they get their wide receiver in the with the number 16 pick, it goes without saying that it depends how the board plays out. But again, if Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, or even Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati, if any or all are still there, like we were talking about before, that is the exact moment when we find out exactly how the New Orleans Saints feel about Jameis Winston. Because if they make that pick, can pull the trigger on a quarterback at that point on one of those 3 guys, and we're hearing, we've heard that those are the 3 guys that they've looked at closely. They've also interviewed Matt Corral, by the way. If they pull the trigger on any of those guys, it's that they don't have 100% faith in Winston. Offensive tackle is another rumored area that this team is looking at. Most national mock drafts have them projected to take a tackle. And there's a couple guys that we're gonna, names just like at wide receiver. We're gonna be watching very, very closely. The kid from NC State, Ike Ekwandu. I think he'll be the first offensive lineman period off the board. Alabama's Evan Neal is another highly regarded tackle. And then the next 2 names, and these are the ones that have most often been mocked to the Saints: Mississippi State's Charles Cross and Trevor Penning of Northern Iowa. I've watched a lot of film on both these guys, and I'm a big fan of them both. I have Cross ranked slightly above Penning, but they're both maulers. I think that that's a strong possibility, but I also believe that Dennis Allen and the Saints could eye up a linebacker or a defensive tackle. This is the monkey wrench that could, I know everybody thinks quarterback. Best available defensive player is the monkey wrench that could throw Saints Twitter into an absolute uproar. What if Jordan Davis or even Devonta Wyatt, one of the 2 Georgia defensive tackles, are there? What if they pull the trigger on a linebacker like Devin Lloyd from Utah, or Georgia's Nakobe Dean, or even Georgia's Quay Walker, who's making a late push up the draft boards. You can make a case for either of those positions being a legitimate first round need. Do you agree?
I would. I had to chuckle a little bit because you kept naming Georgia guys, but that Georgia defense was scary good.
Right.
I think they could go. I think one thing that Saints fans have neglected over the years, and it's been a good thing to neglect in an odd way, but Demario Davis has been so good for New Orleans that we've almost forgotten he's in his 30s.
Yeah.
And at some point, you have to get a replacement.
Yeah.
And now Pete Werner playing alongside him proved to be an excellent pick, a pick that a lot of us in this show last year live were questioning and didn't really understand. I think out of all of us, I might have been the one that was trying to defend it the most, but I still was like, I don't know about this one, because there was other linebackers we all liked a little bit better. That were
you were, and it's not that I didn't like Werner. I think our boss and good friend Kyle Mosley, I think he was the one most vocal against the pick. But I understood it. But something to keep in mind too. Yeah, not only Demario Davis is entering his 11th NFL season, but also Quan Alexander has not yet been re-signed.
Right.
Now, while that's still a possibility, the lack of depth behind Davis and Werner is a big drop off. Which again is something to keep an eye on. Not just in the first round tonight, but with the with the second and third round selections that they have tomorrow. Carolina Panthers pick is in. Hasn't been announced yet.
This is an interesting one. I don't mean to cut you off as we're talking about this, but this is an interesting one in the NFC South because Sam Darnold has clearly lost the faith of the Panthers' trust. And there were some rumors
in the first place, but yeah,
there were some rumors that Darnold was approached by the Panthers trust and told that it's very highly likely that the Panthers draft a quarterback. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be in round one. That could very well be in round two. But this is an interesting spot that the Saints have to watch because if it's an offensive tackle, it's going to be the first offensive tackle off the board, and you're a third of the way to your pick. So it might fall well for you in terms of a tackle falling in your lap. But you know as well as I do, once one goes, it's like the floodgates open. They all go.
Absolutely.
So this is going to be an interesting pick that's going to affect New Orleans draft board one, but then two, you got to face the guy twice a year. So I'm really curious what this pick is going to be for the Panthers. And they're in a weird spot too because they do have talent offensively, and they're starting to rebuild that offensive line. Mm-hmm. They're not in the position that they were a few years ago where some people said they could knock the Saints out of winning the NFC South when the Saints had that 4-year stretch. This team has gone backwards. They have a lot of questions at quarterback. Remember, Cam Newton started a handful of games for them last year. So I'm curious to see how much faith they have in these top quarterbacks towards the top of the board.
Yeah, I am too. And Kenny Pickett of Pitt has been a name linked to Carolina quite a bit. Much more so than Malik Willis. And Pickett, for his skill set, for whatever you believe that that is. I need to zip my lip. His skill set, at least what he showed in college, probably fits Matt Rule's offense because like you mentioned, Carolina has a lot of talent at the skill position players. Namely Christian McCaffrey at running back, Chuba Hubbard at running back, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson at receiver. But another problem with the Panthers, and this was very evident in Cam Newton's last 3 or 4 years with the team, they couldn't protect the passer. They had literally zero push or protection up front. So I say it's a 50-50 bet. Flip a coin whether Panthers go quarterback. If it is, I think it's Pickett, or whether they go offensive tackle here. You can make a strong case for either one. But I think whichever position they go most definitely affects the New Orleans Saints draft board.
Well, and I'm glad you said what you did about the offensive line because I think the Panthers' offensive line took some years off of Cam Newton's NFL career, whether it was in Carolina or somewhere else. That too, because he really struggled. fun fact, and maybe one of many interesting facts and stats that we throw at you today. Over his last 13 starts as a Carolina Panther, Cam Newton is 0-13 as a starter. And,
Wow.
we just said they've had talent, but the inability to protect even a guy as elusive and big and strong as Cam Newton, that tells you all you need to know about, in my opinion, what the Panthers have to fix. If I was a betting man, I'd put money on offensive tackle.
Well, and if we're right about either position, and Goodell's about to make the announcement, all 5 players picked so far have been on the defensive side. I just realized that. And you are correct. The pick is going to be offensive tackle Ike Ekwonu from NC State.
Right up the road in Raleigh. That's a good pick for them. They're in an odd spot because, like we both said, Sam Darnold is clearly not the guy for them, and they spent some draft picks, not any heavy stock. I think definitely worth the risk of a former, first round pick. It's clearly not going to work. So when you have a second round pick that's at the start of the second round, there's got to be a guy that you like, or if they see a guy like Kenny Pickett start slipping, they certainly have some draft ammo to go up and make a trade if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, I don't think anybody has any idea where the top 2 quarterbacks, and I have those as Willis and Pickett, where the top 2 are going to go, and a lot depends as far as the other quarterbacks. Desmond Ridder has a potential first-round value. Matt Corral is my favorite quarterback in this class, and by the way, in my opinion, the best fit for a Pete Carmichael offense. But Corral in particular is going to be one of those guys. He might hear his name called late tonight, if someone trades back into the first round. But I think it's more likely that Corral and maybe Ridder or Pickett or Willis slide into an early day 2 pick. And that's what the teams like the Panthers, the Seahawks, and I know I'm missing somebody. The Lions have pick number 32. That's what those 3 teams are going to be watching, and potentially the Saints too, if they think that they might be able to grab a franchise signal caller at the end of the first round or at the beginning of tomorrow's draft.
I think good points made. Another NFC South team is picking 8th. It's the Atlanta Falcons. Bob and I will be taking a short break after the Falcons pick because, hey, it affects the New Orleans Saints, right? You got to face that player for the next 2 years. Take a short little break, come back with pick 12 with the Minnesota Vikings. So a little 4-pick break from hearing us ramble on about what the potential possibilities are. But that puts us right in the driver's seat for things to get a little dramatic before the New Orleans Saints pick. We've talked about tackle. We've talked about receiver. We've talked a little bit about the potential of taking a defensive player. I was mentioning that linebacker is a sneaky spot of need, maybe not a first-round spot. Defensive tackle is one that is really interesting. You brought up the 2 guys out of Georgia and Jordan Davis being that guy's big enough to be 2 draft picks. And that's going to be a name to watch, certainly. But as I wrote, I still think the only way the New Orleans Saints hit a home run tonight is if they address their 2 biggest needs on the offensive side of the ball, because the defense was so good last season. They lost some pieces, yes, but they reloaded with some of those pieces as well. I think tackle and wide receiver are going to be the biggest pieces, and I listed 5 guys that the Saints could draft to hit home runs. We talked about a couple of them already. Penning, the left tackle out of Northern Iowa. Charles Cross, the tackle out of Mississippi State. Talked about Jameson Williams and Chris Olave. And the quiet one that I haven't really talked about is if Malik Willis falls to 16. I like the potential of that kid a lot. And being around the Liberty program a little bit, obviously before he got there, before Liberty made their jump up, That has always been a school and always been a program that has had top tier money to spend. And they finally started doing that, expanding the football stadium, hiring some big names to come in and coach there. And getting to watch that kid on tape when he started jumping into the Heisman conversation, I was a little like, small school guys, Heisman conversation, not my favorite thing. But then you put on the tape and you realize, wow, this kid can do it all with his arm, his legs. He needs some fine tuning. But as we mentioned before, that is something that the New Orleans Saints potentially have is time. But as the draft continues to go, how much are you looking towards a team like Atlanta to potentially take a quarterback?
Oh, Atlanta is a very, very real possibility to take a quarterback. And I believe that if they do, it would be Willis, kind of a local kid, run pass option threat, which is, well, and the Giants are about to make their selection at number 7. Another offensive tackle comes off of the board, Evan Neal from Alabama. I don't think that many people expected either Neal or Aquanu to be available at 16. So that doesn't change the board a whole lot, I don't think. But back to Atlanta. Atlanta just has holes everywhere. They signed Marcus Mariota, but over the course of less than really a full year, they lost Julio Jones and they lost Calvin Ridley. Then they lost Russell Gage in free agency. So they literally have 0 outside of Cordero Patterson. And by the way, they have no offensive lineman either. But Atlanta has invested 4 first-round draft choices in the offensive line over the past 5 or 6 seasons. And those are just players that have not played out for them. I think they go offense here because as porous as their defense was, they at least have some legitimate talent on that side of the football. I think Atlanta will end up going on. Atlanta is probably in a similar situation as Carolina. I think, in my opinion, you flip a coin whether they go. It'd have to be a 3-sided coin. Quarterback, wide receiver, and offensive tackle are all in play here. I personally am hoping it's quarterback or tackle because because of what we said about the top 3 receivers at the top of the show. And count me among maybe the few people that don't believe that the Saints offensive line or offensive tackle position is in nearly the dire straits that many believe. I realize that Teron Armstead is a big blow having lost him. But remember, they have, as it stands right now, they have James Hurst, who is a reliable veteran. He's a better fit at guard, but he has starting experience at tackle and is certainly a capable replacement. So, if you have the opportunity to get a blue chipper like a Charles Cross or Trevor Penning, I agree with you. I still think you address wide receiver first if Williams, Olave, or Garrett Wilson are there. But if your turn comes around again at 19 and Cross or Penning are there, if it's me, I pull that trigger well over a quarterback or any other position. But if Cross or Penning are off the board, I don't think you have to reach for an offensive tackle.
I'm with you as well. I think you could certainly grab a tackle in the 2nd round. Obviously, Hurst isn't the long-term answer, right?
Correct.
At left tackle. So getting a guy to be able to groom him for a year is going to be vital. But wide receiver, as odd as it sounds too, because you start listing off names to Saints fans. Well, they had Marquez Callaway. They have Deontay Hardy. There's something missing. And I think Callaway is going to be a fine player. Never a superstar level player, but he's going to be a fine fit in the New Orleans offense. Hardy's going to be really fun to watch. Just where's he going to line up? What's he going to do? Remember, Taysom Hill's moving back to tight end as well. So that brings another spark to your offense. And you hope Troutman makes a leap because he certainly was starting to play better before he got injured.
Well, there was no place to go but up.
That's true.
But I don't necessarily disagree with that. And we'll have the opportunity to talk tight end through day 2 or day 3. Because that position is just abysmal. But that's not a spot that we're gonna see the Saints address tonight. There are no 1st-round value picks. at the tight end position. But you're right. And I'm a fan of Marquez Callaway, and I'm a big fan of Deontay Hardy. But I think that those are more complementary pieces. Deontay, he's a fine route runner, but he's not a guy you want to rely on as a number 2 wide receiver. Callaway, he's an improved route runner. He's a physical guy. He's not a guy that you want to rely on as a number 2, or at least a consistent number 2. And with Michael Thomas out last year, we saw how that disaster unfolded. Neither of those guys, we doubted their abilities as number 2. They sure as hell weren't number 1 featured receivers, and that's one of the many reasons why the Saints passing game struggled so badly.
Yeah, they definitely need a wideout here in the first round. But if I had to put my money on something, you talked about the potential of the Falcons taking a quarterback here. I'd look out for a guy like Jameson Williams for Atlanta, because here's the reason. We talked about he's going to miss time. But it's not like the Falcons are in dire need of someone coming in because they're making a huge playoff push or anything. This is a team that is in a rebuild mode, right, and they can afford to wait for him to get healthy. I definitely look for Jameson Williams for the Atlanta Falcons.
I can very much see, and the pick is about to be announced, I can very much see Jameson Williams. It makes so much sense. And I actually think that's who it'll be. Or it could be Drake London, the wide receiver from USC.
Sure.
Well, again, we compared Drake London's playing style to Michael Thomas. We saw what Michael Thomas did for the New Orleans Saints offense almost instantly as a second-round pick in 2016. He's the type of guy, and Drake London, I see this too when I watch his film. He's the type of guy that could be a quarterback's best friend in key situations and on third downs. He can be a guy that you can build your intermediate passing attack around. And if the Falcons end up going with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, because remember, Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo, they're both still potential trade opportunities for not only Atlanta but any other team. But if you have Mariota as your quarterback, Marcus is an athletic guy, but he can't get the ball downfield real well. He needs a big target, and now he has one in Drake London, in addition to last year's first-round pick Kyle Pitts. So I can definitely see Drake London's fit in this Atlanta offense.
Well, we will see how the next few picks unfold. As I mentioned earlier, Bob and I are going to take a little hiatus for picks 9, 10, and 11. We'll rejoin you for pick 12 with the Minnesota Vikings. As of right now, New Orleans Saints staying put at 16-19. If something changes, we will come right back. But until then, enjoy the next few picks, and let's keep the nerves down, guys. Go get a snack or something. The Saints pick is coming up soon. We appreciate you guys tuning into the Saints News Network 2022 NFL Draft Show. And the Saints have made a trade.
Yes, sir, they have.
Well, guys, we want to hear from you.
Lumi is terrified.
Everybody's petrified, but the Saints have made a trade. Who's it going to be? And as the trade details come out, we will let you know.
But yes, the Saints have made a trade. They are now sitting at pick number 11. In case you guys missed it while we were gone, the Seahawks selected Charles Cross, offensive tackle from Mississippi, and the Jets at number 10 selected wide receiver Garrett Wilson from Ohio State.
All right, here are your trade details. Don't mean to cut you off, Bob. The trade details, the Saints are trading 16, a third rounder, and a fourth rounder. So the Saints will still remain at 19 as they move up in the draft.
Is the third and fourth rounder both in this year's draft?
According to NFL Network, it appears, yes, they will both be this year's draft picks.
I'm not sure how I feel about that, Brendan, because I felt one of the strengths of this draft was its depth. But it depends on what they do with the pick here. I think now it's all the more important to get a player who's going to have an immediate impact. So, if that's correct, then we can all but rule out quarterback. And I think it's notable, too, that since a quarterback has not yet been taken, I don't think the Saints made this deal to move up to get one. I got to believe it's offensive tackle or wide receiver. Now, 3 of the 4 top-rated tackles are already gone. So even if it's me, again, I want to check off that wide receiver box right now. Garrett Wilson's already gone, but I still have Jameson Williams and Chris Olave. But if your school of thought is you got to replace Teron Armstead with a blue chip prospect, the only blue chipper left, because I do like some tackles in this draft, but there's a big drop off between the top 4. 3 of which have already been taken. Number 4 being Trevor Penning.
So official trade details, Washington sends the 11th pick to New Orleans for picks 16, 98, and 120. So again, New Orleans will retain pick number 19 that they acquired in the trade with Philadelphia. So with that being said, I don't hate the trade. I would have almost figured you would have to trade 16 and 19 to move up into the top 10, or rather 11. But New Orleans will retain its second first-round pick. Like you said, Bob, I don't think it's for a quarterback at this point.
No.
You started seeing the tackles come off the board. I had said that when the Panthers selected the tackle at 6. When one goes, they all start going. But I would love for it to be a wide receiver here.
Me too. But if you look at the Vikings at 12, Texans at 13, Ravens at 14, Eagles at 15, I could see maybe one of those teams grabbing a wide receiver. I can't see 2 of them, just my hunch. But again, we could see other trades happen. Chiefs, Packers are 2 teams that come to mind that are receiver needy. That could look to jump in that top 15 too. I think it's a strong possibility it's a wide receiver, but I have a feeling they're going to go tackle here. Now we say that, watch them go defensive line.
Right. Well, that's how it is every year. As soon as we think we know what Mickey Loomis is doing, Mickey decides to change it up on us, and that's why we sit here and Mickey sits where he is. I'm really looking forward to hearing from John Hendricks, who's down at the Saints facility. I can't wait for him to join in and talk with us when he can, especially after this pick comes through, because then we have an 8-pick hiatus between now and the Saints' next pick. And if you haven't, or you just are joining us, there it is, the official trade details on the screen. The Saints have acquired pick 11 from Washington for picks 16, 98, and 120. Paul T says, it's a move for the future. I love how aggressive we are being. HBCU Legend says wide receiver. Well, Kyle, I think that's what we're all kind of hoping for here. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. And Paul, I do agree. I like how the Saints are being aggressive. However, what you also said is there goes the depth of the draft. That is a little concerning.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the Saints be aggressive through late in day 2 and early in day 3 before. So I'm not, certainly not discounting that. But as it stands right now, now they do still have their second round pick, number 49 overall.
Yes.
So yeah, I do think that's key. And I don't have any details, but Tom Pelissero is reporting that the Lions are next on the clock, which would be at pick number 12. So that would mean that they have traded with the Vikings at 12.
Here's a one for you, Bob. Big time scare before the draft. Georgia's Trevon Walker was in a serious car accident in Athens.
Oh my God.
Crashing into 2 parked cars. Has emerged without injuries, no citations, but a scare for sure.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I'm glad to hear he's not hurt.
And the pick is in, Bob.
It is.
Would you like me to beat you to it?
Sure.
With the 11th pick in the NFL draft, the New Orleans Saints select Ohio State wide receiver Chris Olave. Olave to New Orleans. We have Kyle T. Mosley joining us now. There's Mr. Kyle T., who's man of many different things today. But the pick is officially in. The New Orleans Saints take Chris Olave, a guy that Bob and I both mocked to the Saints earlier this week. Kyle, as we welcome you in, let's get your initial takeaways.
Sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
There you are.
All right. So I think it's a great pick. Number one, we knew that the Saints needed to have some sort of wide receiver, right? You have somebody that you can count on, good hands, good speed. So, Bob, I really like the pick, man. I think he's going to fit in. Well, and they always love an Ohio State guy.
Yeah, and Olave was my favorite receiver. I had him on the number 1 on my board, just above Jameson Williams. Not only mainly because of Williams' ACL injury, but I also think Olave is potentially the best route runner in this class. He's a big play threat that could take the top off a defense. He goes about 6'1", 188. So you do worry a little bit about how he's going to perform against bigger physical corners that can match his athleticism. But guys, look at it this way. Michael Thomas is going to draw a defense's number 1 corner, certainly initially, as long as Thomas is healthy. So, Olave is going to be going against number 2 and 3 corners. Again, I think he's a terrific intermediate route runner. With the big play speed, I think he ran about a 4.36 at the combine. Real quick guy with the ball in his hands too. I think it's a terrific pick.
Yeah, I do as well. I like it, but man, Jameson Williams,
I know that's your guy.
Yeah, but I like it. You can't go wrong with either one of those guys, in my opinion. But he fits the offensive scheme. He fits the profile of the type of player the New Orleans Saints like to acquire. And to be able to jump up there, I think they had some fears that the other teams ahead of them, like you said, the Vikings and those guys may be keying in on him as well. So good pick. Like it. Good. Done. For the first round.
I'm really glad too that New Orleans was able to go up and get a guy that obviously was very high on their board without surrendering the other first round pick. So the fact that New Orleans is able to retain pick 19, still go up and get their guy and receiver Chris Olave, it allows them some flexibility, like Bob and I were talking about earlier in the show, whether they want to go offensive tackle at 19 if a guy like Petting is still there, if they want to go defensive line. It really opens the door to be able to do whatever you need to at 19 and still improve the roster going into next season.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. So looks like now the Saints are off the board for the rest of the first round, right?
No, they still have number 19.
So they were able to retain it. Okay, all right, good.
Yeah. Now, they and I want to get your thoughts on this too, Kyle. According to initial trade details, the Saints obviously swapped 16 and 11 with Washington, and New Orleans also gave up a 3rd round pick that would be number 98 and their 4th round pick at 120 in this year's draft. Both Brennan and I feel that one of the strengths of this draft was its depth. Are you a little concerned that the Saints have sacrificed that opportunity to take advantage of the depth of this draft?
No. Well, if you know Mickey Loomis, they usually jump back in to those rounds anyway. And I think that might be one of the things that they have already projected to be able to go back into the meat of the draft where you really make your bones, right? 3rd, 4th, 5th round type of guys. So I expect more activity will be coming from the New Orleans Saints when it comes to that.
Yeah, tomorrow I think is going to be a big day.
Yeah, guys, then I got to go back to the Pels. I'll be right back. Okay.
All right, the very busy man, Kyle T. Mosley, HBCU Legends. He's got Pelicans Scoop now. If you guys haven't checked them out yet, Sports Illustrated's team page for the New Orleans Pelicans is Pelicans Scoop. They're in the middle of a big playoff series with the Phoenix Suns, and they're giving the Suns a team that was far and away, in my opinion, the best team in the regular season, NBA-wise. They're giving them some trouble. Big game down at Smoothie King tonight. So if you guys are Pelicans fans, go ahead and check them out as well. But let's continue to talk about Chris Olave going to New Orleans, a guy we both mocked. You just shared why you thought he was a great fit. One thing that I'm glad you brought up is at 6'1", there's a lot of speedsters. There's a lot of really good route runners that don't really crack 6 feet. So you have a guy like Olave who is a great deep ball threat, a great route runner. He's going to be able to create space for a guy like Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara underneath, but you're not surrendering the height either. He certainly has the ability to go up and get the ball. He is very familiar with playing in the Superdome. You guys remember the great game he had against Clemson in the Superdome a few years ago, 2 touchdowns and 130 plus yards in that game. And like I said, he had mentioned earlier in the offseason, I believe it was at the Combine, how he would love to be in New Orleans, referenced his relationship with Michael Thomas, the fact that they were able to exchange messages throughout, and just what New Orleans has been able to build and the success receivers have had down there. I knew he was excited at the potential way back at the Combine. He's got to be buzzing right now, knowing he's going to be a member of the Black and Gold.
Yeah, absolutely. And while you were breaking down, the pick, the Lions, who traded up from 32 to 12 with the Vikings, they picked Jameson Williams out of Alabama. So suddenly the trade up for Olave does make a heck of a lot more sense. Garrett Wilson was already off the board. Dan Campbell, of course, is the head coach for the Detroit Lions, former Saints assistant and Sean Payton disciple. So maybe the Saints were getting an inkling that some of these moves were going to happen. We saw New Orleans be very aggressive throughout the 16-year tenure of Sean Payton, and we wondered if that kind of aggressiveness was going to continue. Now that Payton has stepped away. I know you and I weren't curious about it because Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland are both aggressive guys, and they remain. I was happy to see the Saints be aggressive, go up and get their guy. And of course, I've been pounding the table for months and months now, and not only about Olave specifically, but about the wide receiver position in general. To me, you can make a logical argument for literally going just about any other direction at pick number 19, as long as you've checked off the wide receiver box, and they have done that. And not only that, if you are a guy that's hoping the Saints pick up an offensive tackle, Penning is still on the board, with the Lions picking of, Jameson Williams. We're looking at the Texans at 13, Ravens at 14 is a spot to watch. Eagles at 15, back to Washington at 16, Chargers at 17, Eagles at 18 before the Saints pick at 19. So, yeah, again, if you're a guy that's keeping your fingers crossed for an offensive tackle or one of those big-time defenders, specifically from Georgia, or Devin Lloyd, the linebacker from Utah, all those guys are still in play right now.
And talking about what the Saints do at 19, our viewer Paul T says, what's our biggest hole now that receiver is taken? I think Bob just laid out that it could go anywhere. But the biggest concerns, and we mentioned this earlier in the show, tackle, linebacker, defensive tackle. I think any three of those, you could make the argument for being the next biggest need. But New Orleans does a good job of getting what we both agreed, Bob, was the biggest need, and that was getting a playmaker at receiver, and that was getting a guy like Chris Olave, who I think a lot of Houdat Nation was mocking the Saints to take and was excited to take. I mean, there's plenty of times a ton of people get mocked to New Orleans, and no one in the Houdat Nation wants to touch that guy. But I think this is one that the Houdat Nation was hoping for. They end up getting it. And like I said, I'm pretty satisfied that New Orleans doesn't give up a whole lot. They gave up a little, but not a whole lot to move up those 6 spots. So good move, in my opinion, for New Orleans. John Hendricks is putting out now an article on the Saints selecting Olave. So head to si.com/NFL/Saints to read up on John's latest work. We're going to have some analysis of the pick in our writings at the top of the morning. As we're with you for the remainder of the evening. But New Orleans able to make the trade up, have a couple picks before pick 19. Want to hear from you guys. Paul T, you've been really active. Let's see, Kobe East says the Saints can't draft. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, Kobe East, because I would say, without giving too much away of an article, Bob, I think both of us would probably put this as an A pick for New Orleans, and that includes giving up what they did to move up to pick 11. I would certainly put this in the B+ to A category for New Orleans to go grab Olave in this position and go up and get a guy that was high on their board. And I think that has to be applauded too, Bob. I think a lot of people that aren't as aware and people that don't follow and cover the team as closely as we do, that is a sacred piece of the process, is where do these people line up on a board? And that is almost your scripture, your Bible, if you will, as you go into the war room. And if that is your scripture and you say, well, this player is rated as my 10th best player and we can get him at 11, and the Saints were sticking to the script and they went and got their guy. I think that's something to be applauded too, especially if you're not overreaching, which I don't think the Saints.
No, I don't think they did either. A lot of national mocks, it had Olave really not dropping any further than the Saints at 16. And there were some projections that I saw him going to the Jets as early as number 10. So this is about the range that Olave was expected to go to. And the Saints started a trade frenzy. They were the first trade of tonight's first round. But, as we already know, the Lions immediately followed suit by trading up to number 12. Well, the Eagles have pulled off a trade with the Texans. So now Philadelphia sits at pick number 13. That pick is in, but not yet announced. So again, I agree with you, and I love the aggressiveness that the Saints regime continues to show. And I love the player. I love Chris Olave as a player when I broke him down. The Saints feel very confident in Ohio State players, and by the way, have had great luck with Ohio State players. I don't see how you can dislike the pick, other than the fact that they gave up some of the depth, in this first round. But like you alluded to, if a guy like Olave is at the top of your board and at your most critical area of need, I think you absolutely do what you can to go get him. And I love the fact that they kept that second first round pick. I think that is crucial.
Yeah, it's vital. Absolutely. John Butler, a friend of the program, both here and on Twitter, glad that they didn't move up for a quarterback. Well, that brings up an interesting conversation, Bob, is At pick 19, we're currently at pick 13. The pick is in. We're waiting for the selection. John also says people on ESPN are loving Olave when the Saints grabbed him. Great. I think the national media is with us on this one, Bob. It's just a great fit. But we're at pick 13, right? And that's the Philadelphia Eagles, who are in no need of a quarterback. Jalen Hurts going to be the quarterback of the future, at least as it looks.
Yeah, we think.
We think. There's not a whole lot of teams between 13 and 19 that are in dire need of a quarterback. If Pickett or Willis is there, are you against the Saints doing it at 19?
No, I'm not. And for all the reasons that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you have the option of a fifth year option on a rookie contract at the highest paid position in all of sports. If you don't, and I say that I can't say this enough. I personally have confidence in Jameis Winston. I like his fit in this offense, and I like him as a quarterback. But if the Saints have an opportunity to pick up another rookie passer, that will tell us how the Saints feel about Jameis Winston. So, if it's me personally, I go another direction. But the reason that I mocked in both mock drafts, first Matt Corral and then Desmond Ridder, a quarterback to the Saints at pick 19, was because I don't see much indication that the New Orleans Saints have that same kind of confidence that I do in Jameis Winston. So I think a quarterback at 19 is very, very much in play.
I do too. Paul T asks, who do you compare Chris Olave to? What is your NFL comparison, Bob, for Chris Olave?
Terry McLaurin of the Washington Redskins Commanders football team, whatever they're calling themselves this week. McLaurin's McLaurin's one of the better route runners in all of football. A very, very underrated receiver. A smaller guy, but able to play pretty physically. But I actually think Olave is a better athlete than McLaurin. He's more of a deep threat. But a lot of those intermediate traits that has made Terry McLaurin so successful, Olave shows me those same kind of traits when I saw his film. And Georgia defensive tackle Jordan Davis goes to the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's a pretty good fit for Philadelphia. I can definitely see Jordan Davis being a Broad Street bully. Could definitely see it. He's big enough to be a couple Broad Street bullies, but he fills up space like no other in this draft. I think far and away the best defensive tackle in the draft. Big part of what Georgia was able to do to win a national championship. I mean, shoot, we've listed like 5, maybe even 6 Georgia Bulldog defenders that could go in the first round or first or second round. Such a talented group that they were, and Davis is a really good pick for them. So pick 14 now. But I do want to go back to what I was saying with the teams between now and New Orleans' next pick not really needing a quarterback. So let's talk about these teams and try to go one by one. Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, don't really need a quarterback.
Right. But could make a strong case for them to grab an offensive tackle.
Yes, absolutely, which might be your Trevor Penning, who would stay in the same colors that he did in college with Northern Iowa. Houston could certainly see them take a quarterback. Washington. Washington could be a team that takes a quarterback. Then you have the Chargers, who have the best young quarterback in football, in my opinion, in Justin Herbert. And then again, Philadelphia, who Jalen Hurts looks to be the guy of the future. So you have 2 teams there in Houston and Washington that could go quarterback back to back. But here's the other thing, Bob. You said at the beginning, and I think most people who followed the draft pretty closely, nobody, and I mean nobody in draft experts, national media, local media, middle guys like us, nobody could project where these guys were going. I saw quarterbacks going as high as the top 5. I saw guys like Pickett and Willis dropping into the 20s. Nobody really knows where these guys are going to go.
No, they don't. And because of that, you mentioned Philadelphia as a possibility that they might want to look another direction than Jalen Hurts. Houston really, at least reportedly, really liked the way Davis Mills, their second-round pick from Stanford last year, played. But do they like him better than any of the quarterback prospects this year? Washington is the latest reclamation project for Carson Wentz. Do they believe that they could do something with him? They're paying him a good bit of money. Or are they going to hedge their bets and go quarterback there? I don't think so. I can't see Philadelphia going for one either. Houston, the way they've been running their franchise in recent years, who the heck knows what direction they're going to go? They might not know. Or will another team trade back into that range, thinking, "Oh my God, I didn't think Kenny Pickett, or I didn't think Malik Willis would fall this far into the mid-teens." So, do I want to make a deal now if you're Atlanta, if you're Carolina, if you're Seattle, if you're Detroit? I can't see the Detroit Lions making another deal. But those are just examples of the type of movement that we could see. Or was the fact that a lot of people's narrative, myself included, were saying, I was as harsh as saying I didn't see any first-round value in any of these quarterbacks. Maybe all of these NFL teams feel that same way.
I'm surprised to hear you say that there's not a first round value quarterback in the draft.
It's at the same time they get overdrafted like crazy. So that's even true. I don't see the first round value, I also see the logic in taking one. And if you're a team without a quarterback, you almost have to.
We'll see how the rest of the board falls. Let's see some of the best players left available in the draft. Is there anybody that I'm surprised has not been taken? Yes. I would say for me personally, the only guy I'm really surprised has not found a home yet is Kyle Hamilton of Notre Dame, a guy who some people had as high as the top 7 at the safety spot. Some of the best remaining, Jermaine Johnson II out of Florida State. Remember, we saw a ton of edge rushers early. Trevor Penning might be the best tackle left available. And then you have the linebackers that we were talking about in Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd out of Utah. And then you start seeing some of the quarterbacks pop back up. I think, as we talked about, New Orleans is going to hit a point where they have plenty of options. But out of those names that I mentioned, Bob, are you surprised to see any of those guys still on the board that could potentially be a fit for New Orleans?
And you left one out, a player that I really like, Devonta Wyatt, the other defensive tackle from Georgia. Wyatt, Jordan Davis is going to be your run stuffer, your early down guy. But Devonta Wyatt actually shows me that he has the potential to be a better interior pass rusher than Jordan Davis. And the Saints got very little interior disruption at pass rushers from that position last year. Onyemata was the only listed defensive tackle to have any sacks for the Saints in 2021. And Kyle Hamilton just went to the Baltimore Ravens, by the way.
Well, there goes the guy I was surprised was still on the board.
Right. But yeah, I mean, back to Devonta Wyatt. Onyemata, by the way, is in the last year of his contract as well. So is defensive tackle Shai Tuttle. And we just didn't see a lot of interior depth or disruption, like I said, from the Saints defensive tackle position. So that's why when I was looking at possibilities for defensive tackle for the Saints, if that's the direction they went, as much as I love Jordan Davis, I think Devonta Wyatt is just as good as, if not a better fit, as a pass rusher for New Orleans. But having said that, if Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, or Devin Lloyd are available at linebacker at 19, and I think Trevor Penning stands a pretty good chance of being off the board, I think I go linebacker.
Yeah, well, as we mentioned earlier, it's a position that doesn't have a lot of depth. And as much as we love DeMario Davis in New Orleans, he's not getting any younger. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Saints do there. I want to take a brief second to talk about free agency, something we haven't talked a whole lot about in our hour-and-a-half show to this point. New Orleans was relatively quiet in free agency, to the point where, I mean, big shocker to you and I, but Who Dat Nation not very impressed with the Saints' lack of presence in splash free agency. But I felt like they knocked out a couple good ones and some intriguing ones as well. One that I was a little surprised not to see, and we might see it be filled, that need it is in the draft. Probably not tonight, hopefully not tonight, but in rounds 2 through 7, is at running back.
Yeah.
Obviously, the looming suspension, potential suspension for Alvin Kamara, as his court date got pushed back to August. Those reports from our very own John Hendricks. Do you see New Orleans taking a running back in the draft, or is there a guy in free agency that is still available that you think could fill a need? We're talking about playmakers. Obviously, the Saints got Olave. If they do miss Alvin Kamara for any extended period of time, they're going to need a playmaker at the running back spot, not named Mark Ingram.
Yeah. And because of that, I already expected the Saints to address linebacker running back in either free agency or the draft. And that vaulted up the list of needs when Kamara had his little incident in Las Vegas. So yeah, I 100% expect the Saints and hope the Saints draft a running back. Could be as early as day 2 tomorrow. Now I had them looking, in my mock drafts, I had them looking in the 3rd, 4th round range. As of right now, because of the trade to get Olave, those options are gone. But there's a few guys. Running back, I think, is a position that has some nice depth from the film that I've seen. And we've also seen, again, this was under Sean Payton, but we've also seen the Saints unearth gems at that position. Either through undrafted players or late round draft picks. But as far as free agency, there's still some names out there. Wayne Gallman, formerly of the Giants and Vikings, is one name that comes to mind. But a lot of the big names, starting caliber backs that they had an opportunity to get, are long gone. All the more reason why I think the Saints may look at this position. And if you want an upset pick, Texans are picking at 15. Okay, we've seen our first interior lineman come off the board. Kenyon Green, he played tackle, but he's projected at guard from Texas A&M, goes to Houston at number 15 overall.
One of the few interior linemen in the top 20.
Yeah. But back to running back. Yeah, you want a shocker? What if the Saints at number 19 draft Breece Hall from Iowa State, or maybe even Kenneth Walker from Michigan State? I like both of those players. To me, that's a little bit of a reach in that range, but it checks off at need, especially if you think you're going to lose Alvin Kamara for as many as 6 or 8 games, which is entirely possible. Now, something to note too, folks, NFL teams, for transgressions like Kamara had, or off-season, drug test failures, things like that, NFL teams already know what's going to happen to their player as they enter the draft. We found that out. I forget with who, a couple of years ago, but with the Saints. So it's entirely possible. The corruptly evil Commissioner Roger Goodell has already informed the Saints. Look, regardless of what happens with Kamara's trial, he's going to face discipline, and it's going to be approximately this. So if the Saints have any kind of inkling of that, I think the running back, again, first round would be a little bit of a reach, but it'd be one of the shockers of tonight's festivities, I think.
What about a guy like James Cook? We talked about Georgia guys a lot already on the defensive side of the ball, but James Cook, a guy who fairly good hands and could be a day 2 type of pick for a team like New Orleans.
James Cook would absolutely be a day 2 pick. And I love his big play potential, love his receiving ability out of the backfield. He's not much. Georgia had kind of a thunder and lightning backfield going for them really the last couple years. But Cook was the lightning. Zamir White was the thunder, the angry runner between the tackles, the guy that they really depended on in short yardage and near the goal line. Of those two backs, I think Zamir White is the better fit for what New Orleans would need to do as a complement to Alvin Kamara. But if you're going to be missing Kamara for up to half the season, you need now someone to replace what Kamara can do as a receiver. That's where James Cook, could potentially be in play.
I'll throw a free agent name at you, especially as a guy who could be like a season rental, depending on what goes on with Kamara, and a guy that played pretty close to where I am. I think I got to see him in college once or twice, and that's Tariq Cohen, who's still a free agent, the former Chicago Bear, coming off of a knee injury. I think you could certainly take a flyer on a guy like him, get him for maybe a 1 year, $2-3 million contract, and just see what he's able to do. Guy who's just lightning quick, shifty as can be. Got a nickname while he was at North Carolina A&T. Got the nickname of Human Joystick from his teammates, and he's certainly that. Obviously, any guy coming off a knee injury that relies on that kind of agility and speed, there's some question marks, but I could certainly see a guy like him be a fit for New Orleans. Let's go back to what you were saying with dark horse picks. We talked a little bit about running back, but with the Saints approaching pick 19, outside of running back, who would you see as a dark horse type of selection for New Orleans?
Well, we've already mentioned the linebackers, and there's three that I would love to have even at 19. Safety is another position. Now, the Saints lost Malcolm Jenkins to retirement and Marcus Williams in free agency. They signed, in what my opinion, outside of Marcus Williams, they signed the second best safety available in free agency, and that was Marcus May. They also brought in Daniel Sorensen, kind of a backup, near the line of scrimmage guy, and Justin Evans, the former second-round pick who's struggled with injuries the last couple of years. We've seen Kyle Hamilton come off of the board, but there's 2 or 3 safeties that I absolutely love. That again, it might be a little bit of a reach at 19, but Jaquan Brisker from Penn State, Daxton Hill from Michigan, and even another Georgia defender, Lewis Sine. Those are 3 safeties that could sneak into, according to projections, the last part of the first round. So it might be a little bit of a stretch at 19, but if Dennis Allen feels, look, I have my replacement for Marcus Williams, I don't have my replacement for Malcolm Jenkins, maybe he eyes up one of those guys.
Yeah, and honestly, taking a guy like Daxton Hill from Michigan, I don't think that would be too much of a reach. He's a guy that's projected right there around 20. So if he's available, I think that that is a spot of need. Now, yes, you could look at a guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson and say, oh, the Saints are set of safety. Yeah, no, he's really more of a slot corner. The Saints did bring back
he's also in the last year of his contract, too, something to keep in mind.
That's right. P.J. Williams came back on a 1-year deal, a guy who played very well. And even you, Bob, had to admit he had a stellar year and a really quiet stellar year for New Orleans. But again, just a 1-year contract. And he's a guy that kind of plays a weird corner safety hybrid, just kind of depending on what's going on, similar to what Malcolm Jenkins did for the Saints in his first stint in New Orleans. So they really don't have a true strong safety. Just something to keep an eye out for. But I think I'm with you on the linebackers. And like you said, you have 3 really good ones there. 2 of them coming in Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd. I think Lloyd's more of your sure tackler, maybe the potential replacement for Demario Davis, if you will. But I think either of those picks would be fine, but as long as that lone tackle is still there and Trevor Penning, I think that's the way that I gotta kind of lean for New Orleans. But so far so good for the Saints. They are kind of following your recipe, Bob, and that was making sure you took care of a receiver first. They've done that, and I would say the way that the board has fallen since that selection, I think it actually plays in favor of New Orleans being able to go whichever way they want.
Yeah, it does. Washington, who of course owned the 16th pick after the trade with New Orleans, they just picked a wide receiver who I love, by the way, Jahan Dotson from Penn State.
Yeah, your backyard.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a big fan of Dawson when I broke down his film. Actually, I had him as my fourth-rated receiver, right behind Olave, Jameson, and Garrett Wilson. So we're up to the Los Angeles Chargers at number 17. That pick is in, but not yet announced. I think it's a very real possibility that the Chargers go with Penning here. You have a quarterback that we both love, Justin Herbert. Well, what do you do when you have a young quarterback? You protect him and you surround him with weapons. And here's the pick. They went offensive lineman, but they went Zion Johnson, the guard from Boston College. So Saints fans, Trevor Penning is still there.
And again, I don't know, Bob. I have an inkling. I don't see Tennessee taking a quarterback. And so you're going to have both quarterbacks on the board still. I just have an inkling. It would not be my favorite thing in the world. And I even put that in the latest article, but I said if they go get a guy named Malik Willis, you'd still be hitting a home run because of the potential. But you and I have both shared in the nearly 2 hours we've been on the air. Maybe it's an unhealthy confidence that we have, the both of us, but we both have a lot of confidence in what Jameis Winston can do for the Saints offense. And just not to be a broken record, but you've said it a couple times tonight, is we're going to see how much faith New Orleans has in Jameis Winston. There were some question marks after the strong pursuit for Deshaun Watson. How much faith they really had in Winston. And when Winston was approached with that question, I think he handled it like a true pro and just said, I understand it's a part of the business.
Yeah.
And Winston's in an odd situation too, because for a guy who has not started a whole lot of games for the Saints, he's beloved by a lot of the fan base.
And more importantly, he's beloved by a lot of his teammates in that locker room. There are just so many reasons to think that the Saints could pick a quarterback. Rookie deal, 5th-year option. Look at it. Let's say Jameis Winston does play very well. The Saints are seemingly in cap hell, year after year after year. And while Mickey Loomis is a master, at navigating the cap, it still is what it is. Say 2 years down the road, Winston balls out, and maybe he's in line for to average $40 million a year. What if the Saints already have a rookie quarterback that they drafted in 2022 that they really like? That's going to be on a rookie deal,
right?
Save a whole lot of salary cap space. Again, that's yet another option.
Well, breaking news here for New Orleans fans: the Pelicans lose 115-109 to the Phoenix Suns. Even though it was a good fight, the Pelican season is now officially over. I will say this, though, basketball fans, that team getting Zion back next year, hopefully, knock on wood, for Pelicans fans, because he hasn't played and he's starting to look a little bit Greg Oden-like. It's getting a little scary. But nonetheless, to go make a move to get CJ McCollum this year and see Brandon Ingram just take another, this team's going to be really good.
Yeah,
they're going to be a really fun, scary team for the next few years in the West. So they weren't even supposed to be in that series. So the fact that they scared the Suns, I think there's a lot of positives to take from that. Friend, that information coming from Paul T. So thanks for putting that in the chat. Pelicans lose again by 6. They were eliminated from the playoffs. John Butler, Jameis says all the right things and fits with these guys. Well, I agree.
Yeah,
and that's one thing you can't mess up. You can't mess up the locker room that's been so good over the years. And if they like him there, that doesn't make all your decisions. I mean, Bob, you and I have been around a long time. How many guys have you worked with, whether it be writing or whether it be another profession, where you really like the guy, but it's just not working out?
Yeah.
It happens, but I don't think that's a situation with Jameis. I think he's very likable, and the sample size that you got isn't small. 7 games is a pretty good sample size, and it was working pretty well. So I'll just be interested to see that. But we are just a pick away as the Titans are on the clock, and the pick is in, and we're just waiting for it to be announced. If the Titans don't take a tackle here, you think it's all but certain it's going to be an offensive tackle?
I think with Penning on the board, that's just too tough to pass up. I know what we've said about quarterbacks. I know that I had quarterbacks, in 2 mock drafts going to New Orleans, with pick number 19. And we've talked about some stud defenders that are still on the board. But again, if Trevor Penning is still on the board, I don't think you pass him up. I just don't. And I have a little bit of breaking news. A little bit ago, the Baltimore Ravens traded wide receiver Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, to the Arizona Cardinals for the 23rd overall selection. So the Ravens now own pick number 23. And I believe I saw pick number 100. So that's one of the compensatory picks at the end of the 3rd round. So
interesting.
Yeah. So the Ravens are back in the draft after picking Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame, at pick number 14. They now sit at pick 23. But yeah, back to Trevor Penning. I love James Hurst. But let's face reality. He is not. He's capable, and we've seen him play very well as an injury replacement for Teron Armstead, which we've seen over the last few years many, many, many times. But is James Hurst a Pro Bowl compliment? And by the way, folks, Trevor Penning will be on the board at pick 19. The Titans selection is wide receiver Treylon Burks from Arkansas.
A guy who I saw moving up those mock drafts the last couple of weeks. Receiver was the position to watch throughout the first round. I think seeing now 5 receivers go in the top 20, I think that just gives some reassurance that New Orleans making the move up to 11 to grab Chris Olave was probably the right thing to do. But New Orleans now on the clock.
Yes. But I've said it many, many times. I'm like, you can make a logical reason to go any other direction or any direction with the other first round pick if you check off wide receiver. And I don't know if it's reflective in my body language, but now that they have that wide receiver, I feel much more relaxed. I'm not sitting here, watching and checking off. Well, oh my God, well, this wide receiver just went off the board. This wide receiver just went off the board. Yeah, who's left? Where do the Saints sit? I love that they got their guy. And like I said, in my opinion, this was the team's biggest need, coming into this draft.
I agree. Now, like you said, New Orleans can go any which direction with pick number 19. I think that a lot of us are sitting here saying it should be a tackle, whether that's offensively or defensively. Wouldn't be surprised to see a linebacker. There's a lot of ways New Orleans can go. And as I keep mentioning, New Orleans could certainly go quarterback as Pickett and Willis are still on the board. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers sit at pick 20. And I know a lot of my friends and family are Steelers fans. A good childhood friend of mine, Bogey Gautler, he and I were, friendly jabbing back and forth at each other. Because he was hoping the Saints would take, a quarterback, specifically Pickett or Willis, off the board, so his Steelers wouldn't pick them, at pick 20. But the Steelers have shown a great deal of interest in, especially Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder this offseason. Of course, Kenny Pickett is in their own backyard, and with them sitting at 20, if you're a Steelers fan and want your team to get a quarterback, you have to love the way this draft is unfolding so far.
because at this point, if the Pittsburgh Steelers sit at 20, you're guaranteed to have at least two of the top three quarterbacks still on the board, and maybe all three, depending on where the Saints go with this pick. Yeah, but Brennan, everything we've talked about, quarterback, tackle, everything else, where would you go if you were the one making the selection?
I would have to go tackle. And as I wrote earlier this week, receiver and tackle fill two immediate needs. And that was one thing that hindered New Orleans last season outside of, just injuries, COVID. There were so many things that hindered the Saints last year, but specifically down the stretch, it was the inability to protect whoever was playing quarterback and the inability to get the ball into a playmaker's hands. So for me, I think you have to go tackle. Penning's there. Penning's one of the guys that I mocked to New Orleans. So make me 2 for 2, Mickey Loomis. Make me look like a genius in getting both the picks correct.
Well, I know most Saints fans that I've interacted with hope that you're the one that's 2 for 2 and not me. Because I had Olave going at 16 in both of my mocks. And in the first one at 19, I had him going Matt Corral, quarterback from Mississippi. And in the second one, I had them going, the Cincinnati quarterback, Desmond Ridder. And again, Saints fans, you have to understand something. When you're in a position that, Kyle, John, Brendan, and myself are, when we do these mock drafts or so-called predictions, we're trying to do it based off of what we think the team will do, not what we personally want.
Right. 100% true. Going back to what you're saying about the Steelers, I think, you had Mitch Trubisky was their quarterback signing. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they go and keep the guy in their own backyard. It would just make too much sense. I think that's an easy, logical thing to do. When it's a need, you keep your fan base happy. But obviously, we'll see what the Saints do before the Steelers do. And we'll wait.
Kyle Mosley, you got news?
Saints on the clock. That's all I know, man.
Yeah. Pick in, but not yet announced.
It's pending.
I was to say, I have a feeling it's going to be pending.
It's pending.
Confirmed. All right.
It's pending.
All right.
Let's go play the lottery, guys.
Look, I think the Saints knocked it out. They got two of the guys that were projected to them anyway, and they got the guys that they need. Trevor Penning.
So there you go. The New Orleans Saints select Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa with the 19th pick after taking Chris Olave at 11. They made a trade to go up from 16 to 11 with Washington earlier in the draft. They surrender picks 16, 98, and 120. They retain pick 19 from their trade with Philadelphia, and they take Trevor.
It creates more concern for fans than it does for scouts. Scouts know what they're doing, especially with higher echelon teams like the New Orleans Saints. Penning is a terrific athlete along the edge. I think he could play either left or right tackle, depending on what they want to do with Ryan Ramczyk. He's quick on his feet, which is going to make him an outstanding pass protector. And like I said, as a run blocker, he's just got a mean and nasty streak that's going to endear him to fans.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I had about Penning was great run blocker, little bit questionable in pass protection, but he's got quick, strong hands, and that should translate well into becoming a pretty good pass protector. And honestly, because of the intangibles that this guy already possesses, I could see him being a top tackle in the league, 4 or 5 years from now.
Thoughts, Kyle?
Love it. I love it. Look, man, I was listening to Kurt Warner earlier today, and think about it. Undrafted, 2-time MVP of the league, Super Bowl champion, 6th-round guy named Tom Brady, 7-time Super Bowl champion. You don't know. You don't know what these guys are going to do. It's the system. It's the right time. How can they be able to develop themselves as a football player, right?
Mhm.
And right now, I think if you look at the abilities that Penning brings as well as Chris Olave bring, I think the Saints are on the right track, selecting the type of individuals that will be able to grow and mature as a football player. They have the backbone, they have the pedigree, they have what you want to have in those type of football players. And look, you're playing up in Northern Iowa. You got to be tough. That's my thought. You have to be tough. And,
Right.
replacing Teron Armstead is not going to be an easy feat.
No. Yeah. Hey, Kyle, are you a little bit surprised that nobody has made a move for a quarterback yet at this stage?
No, nobody was in love with the quarterback. Nobody actually was in love with your boy that you love out of Pittsburgh. And I don't care what you say. I think Malik Willis has a tremendous talent and skill set, but he has to fit the right system.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the right offensive coordinator, and will the coaching staff be patient enough to be able to work with the guy?
Oh, he's a work in progress for sure.
No doubt.
I think the one that I like about Willis a little bit more, he just has more upside. But that's the scary thing. Like, potential is the scariest word in sports, and he has so much potential. But for him to find
the P word gets people fired.
Exactly. And that's why none of us are NFL coaches. But nonetheless, I think if he finds the right spot and he has a coach that's willing to sit and work with him, a team like Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense, where he could sit behind like Mitch Trubisky for 2 years potentially. That makes a lot of sense. But any team that wants to throw him out on starter, I just don't think it's going to work.
Yeah. The Steelers pick is in, not yet announced. Do we have our first quarterback going now?
Look, and I think this is a good fit for him. You have a great coach that's going to really take his time and help you to be able to grow and relate with you. So, yeah. And unfortunately, with the circumstance that happened in the tragic passing of Haskins, man, gosh, they need to have some youth there. And condolences to his family. And I like what the NFL did as far as the moment of silence there. But speaking, before we even go more into football, man, the New Orleans Pelicans, they pushed the Suns to the brink. They did fall in Game 6. Kudos to those guys. Congratulations to the Pelicans organization.
Hey, well, before you got on, I was crediting that team, the way that they were able to go get a guy like CJ McCollum at the deadline. Another year of Brandon Ingram making that jump, and Zion looking healthy, and being on the track to come back and be as effective as he's been. This is going to be a really fun team in the Western Conference for the next few years. And I think they have a really good thing going for them. And the other thing, too, who doesn't love Jose Alvarado? Like, that kid is so much fun. And when you get a group like that together and a culture like that together, it's going to be a hard team to beat. And as much as New Orleans fans have beef with Anthony Davis, just thank your lucky stars that he wanted out of New Orleans, because look what you were able to get back out of that. In Ingram, in Josh Hart, that ends up getting traded as part of that CJ McCollum. You didn't get anything for Lonzo Ball, but there was a lot of pieces to that puzzle that have now put the Pelicans in a position to be a Western Conference, playoff contender. And that's a big thing, especially for a city labeled not a basketball city, quote unquote. So a lot of big things for the Pelicans. So I tip my hat to them as well.
Definitely. Question about Penning. Now, Bob, I heard you say that you feel as though he may be interchangeable, right tackle, left tackle. Do you believe they're going to start him out at right tackle during training camp, or would it be just to keep Ramczyk at right tackle and see what he can offer at left tackle and just keep him behind Hurst for a few games?
My personal thought is, that at least early in camp, we're going to see Ryan Ramczyk work over at left tackle because, again, he has that, Ryan has that tremendous bonus built into a deal he signed last year where he gets a hefty raise if he plays left tackle. And again, with Penning, if Penning has a weakness, if you watch his film, it's his ability to be a consistent pass blocker. Mm-hmm. So, if you're going to have a guy that struggles a little bit in pass blocking, you want him on the right side, not the left. So I think at least early in training camp, we're going to see, Ramczyk at least work out on the left side and see how Penning works out on the right. If that falters at all, you have an easy fight. You already know Ryan Ramczyk is an all-pro right tackle. So we'll see him flip then because we already know that not Malik Willis. I think that's the Steelers are about to announce their pick. I think that's when we'll see Penning flip back over to the left side, knowing that James Hurst can fill in at either position.
Before we continue, blockbuster trade in the NFL. The Philadelphia Eagles are acquiring A.J. Brown from the Tennessee Titans.
Well, that's why the Titans had the 18th pick. Wow.
There you go. Trying to see if I can get trade details as we speak. Let's see. The Titans are trading A.J. Brown to the Eagles in exchange for Philadelphia's 18th overall
pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sorry to interrupt.
There you go.
Wow. They stayed in Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania.
Titans a lot of the are trading Brown.
Go ahead.
I'm going to jump back in, guys.
Brown. All right. Trading Brown for the 18th overall selection and a third-round pick. That's it.
Well, I mean, that's what the Cardinals just gave up for Hollywood Brown, too. If you're a wide receiver named Brown, it's not a great night for you.
It might be. It depends how you feel about your situation.
Right.
All right, before we take another break, Bob, I do want to address this question from Paul T. And with both of us having some inside scoop and inside knowledge about smaller colleges, I like this question. Do we worry about players out of small colleges such as Northern Iowa, or do fans just make it a big deal?
Fans make it a bigger deal than what scouts or coaches do. They have done extensive research on these prospects, usually for more than just 1 year. They've been watched for a while. The prospects, and we'll use Trevor Penning for example, since he's the newest New Orleans Saint. Penning went through the practices at the Senior Bowl. And I don't know whether he played East-West Shrine too, but I know he performed pretty well at the Senior Bowl. The Underwear Olympics, the NFL Scouting Combine, pro days. Watching. You like that? Watching extensive film on these guys. It's rather easy to tell if a prospect is strong enough, fast enough, and most importantly, has the proper technique. Those things show up no matter who you're playing against at what level. So I think it's more of a fan's concern than it is for NFL scouts and coaches.
Yeah, well, I mean, John Butler just typed in the chat. Jari Evans came out of a small school too. I'll one up you and say Armstead came out of Arkansas Pine Bluff. You want to go back further into Saints history. You look at a guy from Hofstra University that doesn't even have a football team anymore, is the Saints' greatest receiver of all time, and Marcus Colston. As a guy who's covered the FCS now for 8 years, I can say I've seen so much talent at the FCS level. And, whether it's not just fans, but GMs being influenced a little bit as well for not playing at the SEC or Big Ten or, what have you, there's so much talent at the FCS level. And some of that talent translates well to the NFL, and some end up in Canada and some end up in the arena leagues and what have you. But I do think it is just a fan thing of going, oh, I've never really heard of that school. Are they really any good? Well, listen, their name's not being thrown around during the NFL draft, or certainly the first round, second, third round of the NFL draft. They're not a solid prospect. I think it's a lot of in your head thing. But for a guy like Penning, he's what, 6'6", 6'7", 320 pounds. He's a big dude. And he's a mauler, like Bob said earlier. I think that he's going to be a good fit in New Orleans. He might not be a year one starter, or at least a starter out the gate, but he's certainly a guy that's going to impact this team moving forward. Well,
we
Bob,
have another trade. The Kansas City Chiefs have traded up to the 21st overall pick, where the New England Patriots sat.
Trade frenzies.
Really
Receivers named Brown, and since the Saints traded up to 11, we've seen a lot of trades in the draft. Bob, I think would be a good time to take a little bit of a break, be able to digest these two picks. We'll come back and maybe, if we're fortunate enough, have a full crew to digest these picks. I know Kyle's got some stuff going on. I know John Hendrick's very busy down in Metairie at the Saints facility, but we hope to come back and be able to conclude the draft. I think somebody said in the chat earlier, I think everybody in the Who Dat Nation is going to sleep pretty well tonight, because those were two great picks. And as I said earlier, the Saints needed to hit a home run in this draft. They needed to draft a receiver and a tackle. And in my opinion, they hit a home run, because they did just that. But Bob, we will see you here in about 15 minutes. And we'll come back and wrap up the first round of the 2020 NFL Draft. The Saints select Chris Olave at 11 and Trevor Penning, the offensive tackle out of Northern Iowa, at pick 19. We'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, guys. I'm back. New Orleans has selected Chris Olave at 11, Trevor Penning at 19. And in my opinion, and going back to some of the articles that I had written for the Saints News Network this week, I think the team has hit a home run in the first round, addressing two immediate areas of need. Want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? I see posted up in the chat as well. Was passing on Jameson Williams too conservative for the Saints, or do you like Chris Olave at pick 11? Want to hear from you guys about all of that. Should have Bob Rose coming back to join us fairly soon. But New Orleans does exactly what I felt that they needed to do, right? I think the biggest thing is you look at last year, and Sean Payton even talked about it at the end of last year, was losing both tackles down the stretch was really tough. And losing Teron Armstead to Miami, you have a need at left tackle, Hayden Hurst, or not Hayden Hurst, but rather, but Hurst could definitely fill a need at left tackle for the time being. But Trevor Penning is going to be the answer moving forward. And I think that's a big one. I mean, the guy stands at 6'7". He's 325 pounds. And he's going to be a big part of what the Saints do moving forward when it comes to Olave. Just being able to provide another option offensively. I mean, the team was dead last in separation. I know Bob had talked about and written that New Orleans was one team of a handful that didn't have an 800-yard receiver last year. And last year, the Saints didn't even have a 700-yard wide receiver. And speak of Bob Rose, he's back with me. I was just saying how I think the Saints have really knocked it out of the park here in the first round. I think that both picks are really solid. I was just actually on another live stream talking about Trevor Penning for a podcast out of Atlanta. And, those guys were a little concerned with the pick and his pass protection and his feet and whatnot. And that's something that you and I talked about here as well. But the nice thing, and you had talked about it with Hurst at left tackle, is there's not going to be an immediate pressure to push this guy in Penning into being a starter. And even if you could flip over Ryan Ramczyk to left tackle, I think that the Saints can afford a couple weeks, a couple months, maybe even a full season worth of mentoring this kid out of Northern Iowa.
Yeah, I agree. Trevor Penning, make no mistake, he's going to get the first shot at the starting job. But like you suggested, and like we talked about before we took our little break before, if Penning falters at all, or it looks like he's developing a little bit slower than the team likes, they can fall back on Hurst. Hurst is a proven, capable player at tackle. But once Penning is ready to play, once they feel like he's ready to play, he's going to be in the starting lineup. That also makes the Saints' offensive line stronger. Not only if Penning certainly works out as a first-round pick, but also with Hurst being a better fit at guard. If Andrus Peat, and usually with Peat, it's not a question of if, but when he gets injured, you plug Hurst in at left guard. If Cesar Ruiz continues to be a human turnstile at right guard, maybe you finally give up on him and plug Hurst in there. I like the way Calvin Throckmorton played at guard when Pete went down with season-ending injury last year. There's no question. Hurst is one of their best 5 offensive linemen. I would like to see him starting in place of Cesar Ruiz, but that's not going to happen because Ruiz is a first-round draft pick coming into his 3rd year. But the clock is running out on Cesar. And again, if he falters, you can now plug in James Hurst in there once Trevor Penning is ready to play on the edge.
Kobe East says Trevor Penning was a hell of a pick. You'll open up the outside running lanes for Alvin Kamara. I mean, the fact that you're going to have, and this is something that's interesting too, because I think that Kamara is a very good, if not one of the best in the league, in zone run schemes. And the fact that you're able to have 2 tackles potentially in Penning and Ramczyk that are some of the best run blocking tackles in football. At least Ramczyk is right now. Penning certainly shows the potential. It's going to open up lanes for Kamara, Ingram, whoever the heck's running the football. And if you can get a little bit of production, just a little bit of production out of those guards, and obviously you know what Eric McCoy is going to give you. He's one of the best young centers, if not the best young center in football.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be able to do some really effective things running the football. Want to talk about Andrus Peat and Cesar Ruiz a little bit because you brought them up. You might appreciate where I'm going with this. So yeah, is there a new amount of pressure on those guys knowing what the Saints have done here in the draft and seeing how well a guy like Throckmorton played last year? Is there a little added bit of pressure for those guys to step up and perform?
Not on Pete. I think the Saints, coaches continue to have confidence in him. And as much as the fan base has been down on Pete, he's made 3 Pro Bowls for a reason. When he's on, when Andrus Peat is on and playing well, he's an absolute road grader as a run blocker. What gets him into trouble is when he's asked to pass protect in space. So when that line gets a little bit spread out because the tackles have to move out, to take care of a wide edge rush, that's where Pete could get in trouble with an athletic guy on the inside. The guy who should be feeling the pressure is 2020 first-round pick Cesar Ruiz. I referred to him as a human turnstile earlier, which seemed to amuse you. That's me putting it in a polite way. Throckmorton. Throckmorton is certainly not a top-tier guard, but I really like the way he played last year when he had to step in for an injured Andrus Peat. And that happened because Hurst was asked to step outside, due to the injuries to Ryan Ramczyk and Teron Armstead. Now Hurst, seemingly, if once Penning is ready to play, and again, Penning will be asked, given the opportunity to earn that starting job right away. Hurst is now a terrific inside option. So, I think for Saints fans that wanted Andrus Peat traded or wanted Cesar Ruiz trade, that was never going to happen, folks. But if Ruiz falters just a little bit, Pete Carmichael and Dennis Allen now have the option to fall back on James Hurst because of the selection of Trevor Penning. That's why the pressure, in my opinion, is exponentially increased on Cesar Ruiz, much more so than Andrus Peat.
Well, I want to bring the attention to now day number 2 as we get to the back half and towards the end here of the first round. Pick 25 is where we're at the moment. Well, you're not going to be joining us for day number 2, so we have to go ahead and pick your brain while we can. Prior commitments for Bob Rose will be myself, Kyle T. Mosley will be jumping in, John Hendricks will be jumping in. It's going to be a fun day, but now the Saints only hold one pick tomorrow. It's going to be a second round pick. Nonetheless, Bob, the Saints did sacrifice some picks in 98 and 120 to move up 5 spots to grab Chris Olave today, which I think we're both okay with at this point. And they were able to retain pick number 19. I was asked this moments ago by some other people is, where do you think the Saints go on day 2, and how feasible would it be for the Saints to go grab a quarterback in the second round?
Because of the fact, and that's a great question, because of the fact that they did trade their 3rd and 4th round picks. They still have a 5th rounder and a 6th rounder available, along with number 49 in the second round tomorrow. I don't think the Saints movement is necessarily done. Would not surprise me to see them, maybe sneak back into the last half of day 2 tomorrow, and towards the end of the 3rd round. We've seen the Saints do that a number of times, during Sean Payton's tenure. But if they don't, then I believe the quarterback is off their board altogether. I realize Kenny Pickett is the only guy that's been drafted so far. That still leaves you, Matt Corral, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, Carson Strong, Sam Howell. Even if those guys are available at 49, I think the Saints have more pressing issues. It's obvious to me, it should be obvious to everybody, that they indeed do have at least a short-term confidence in Jameis Winston. While if any of those previously mentioned quarterbacks are there at 49, it might be tempting, but you're still facing a probable suspension of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, who's headed into his 11th NFL season. You still have a lack of depth at linebacker. Now, that would be solved in an instant if they can re-sign Quan Alexander. But you still have a lack of depth at safety, and you still have a lack of depth at defensive tackle. So I can see this is where the Saints will probably be going. At 49 is one of those positions. Maybe even as early as I didn't have the Saints taking a running back until in my latest mock until midway through day 3. And in my first mock, I think early on day 3. But I could see the Saints going if they stick at 49 and don't make any moves for any other picks other than the 2 day 3 they have. They might address running back depending on how that board plays out tomorrow.
I could certainly see that as well. I think the biggest spot for me is if there is a defensive tackle that has slid down the board at 49. I think that's the way you got to go. You brought it up earlier. Yeah, there are guys that Saints fans may really like at defensive tackle. Guys like Shy Tuttle. I mean, the stiff arm on Matt Ryan will live forever, right? Mm-hmm. That's not going anywhere. That's a guy that
to me, Shy should have been signed to a lifetime contract that night. But
that's what it is. That's what it is. And you had your guys like Passanio, who you were really high on, played really well inside, but he's not really bulky enough to be a true defensive tackle. So if you can go grab a guy, maybe a guy like Travis Jones out of UConn.
And I like Travis a lot.
You might be able to grab a guy like him in the second round. I think that might be the direction that you go. The other thing that you got to watch is the inside linebacker spot. Like we were talking about, and all those linebackers that we mentioned earlier are still there.
The only one that's come off the board is Quay Walker, who rocketed up the draft boards in the last week or so. But I really like Quay. But if you're looking at linebacker, Devin Lloyd from Utah is still there.
Right.
Nakobe Dean is still there. And Channing Tindall, the third guy on in that Georgia trio, along with Christian Harris out of Alabama, is also a noteworthy name. Harris is terrific in coverage. Tindall is a run-stopping guy, but athletic enough to develop in coverage. And if there's a Demario Davis clone in this draft, it's Devin Lloyd.
Yeah, I don't think Lloyd's going to be there without the Saints moving up, but I could see a guy like Christian Harris being there, and I'd be certainly okay with a guy like that. At the safety spot, you got another Georgia kid that could certainly be there, and it's standing at 6'2". He's a big safety, and that's Lewis Kine, and I think that's a guy that could certainly fit some needs for New Orleans as well. But I think we're both kind of in consensus right now is the Saints took care of the offensive side of the ball today. Tomorrow's got to be focusing up on that defensive side of the ball and some of those other needs that they have. But I'd say for today, it's gone just about as well as it could for New Orleans, at least on paper.
Yeah, certainly on paper. None of us know for sure. No matter how much we think we know, NFL teams don't know for sure. No matter how much they think they know. There's been several busts over the years. Of people that thought that were believed to be surefire, home run prospects. And there's been reaches in the first round that had people scratching their head, pounding their table, or throwing stuff at their TV. That turned out to be very, very good or Pro Bowl caliber players. But yeah, I agree with you. I think you have to give us the Saints an A for the players that they nabbed tonight and how they were able to get them.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, before we call it an evening, because knock on wood, I'd say it's safe to say the Saints aren't trading back into the first round. You never know with this team. You never know in general, but I would say, especially with what they gave up to move into the to 11, that the Saints are probably done for this evening. So before we sign off, any parting thoughts with the Saints first round? And since we won't have you tomorrow, what's a bold prediction for tomorrow?
Well, yeah, Olave has been my guy since it feels like about November. And I've said time and time and time again that no matter what they did with that second first round pick, as long as they checked off the wide receiver box, which they did so in resounding fashion with Olave, I think that the Saints were going to come out ahead. I like the fact that I know I had quarterback mocked to them twice, but I like the fact that they went offensive tackle instead of quarterback, instead of overdrafting a quarterback. That's got to make Jameis Winston feel good too. It certainly gives him a sense of job security. As far as the second round, again, I like the depth of some of this running back class. Including an FCS prospect that I fell in love with when I watched his film. Pierre Strong. So I think this, barring any more trades, I think the Saints may wait on a running back. If they don't get a linebacker tomorrow, that tells me that they've talked to Quan Alexander and are at least in a position to sign him. And if that's the case, look for them to go maybe defensive tackle if a Travis Jones from UConn falls, or maybe safety. We've only seen one safety taken off the board so far, and Kyle Hamilton. And guys to watch at safety are Jaquan Brisker from Penn State, Daxton Hill from Michigan. You mentioned signed from Georgia. Jalen Petrie, a converted cornerback from Baylor, is another name to watch for at safety. Along with maybe an under the radar guy like Brian Cook from Cincinnati. But I do agree. I believe the Saints will ultimately go defense tomorrow. Especially if they only have the one pick, which is the 49th overall in the second round tomorrow evening.
Well, Bob, I think that was well said. I think that you've kind of said everything that needs to be said. I can beat a dead horse. The Saints, in my opinion, hit a home run tonight. They did exactly what they needed to do. In my eyes, I should play the lottery because, the two guys out of the five guys I said that they needed to pick to hit a home run, I got two of them. So I think those are some pretty good odds, 2 for 2 so far. And when it comes to tomorrow, they could go a ton of different ways. But as long as it is filling a need, and Bob, you just listed off 3-4 different positions of need, 3 of them being on the defensive side of the football, I think that they're going to be in pretty good shape. Well, Bob, we have a busy couple days. We have a busy week next week. There's a lot to read, a lot of videos to watch, a lot of live streams for people to hang out and watch as well. So it's up on the screen, but how can people follow you on the World Wide Web?
Well, folks, another position to watch tomorrow is tight end. And we don't have the time to, for me to get into the prospects, but there's a couple that I really like as potential day 2 selections. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining Brendan and I, along with Kyle Mosley, on our live broadcast tonight. I can be followed on Facebook, Bob Rose. We're over on Twitter at BobbyR2613. And yes, I do publish all of my works through the Saints News Network and SI.com on my personal page. But you can follow every single one of us on the Saints News Network, or through the Saints News Network on Facebook, or at Saints News over on Twitter. And for those of you who do follow our works, and I know I speak for the rest of us, we love you so much for it, and cannot show enough appreciation to you.
Absolutely. Make sure you also check out Bob's Facebook group, the Bayou Blitz. If you haven't joined already, it's a good little community. Over 1,000 people in that community, just talking about Saints football. I want to give a special shout out to John Butler, Kobe East, Paul T. You guys have been hanging out with us all night, so I certainly appreciate that. Bob certainly appreciates that. The whole Saints News Network crew appreciates you guys hanging out with us for almost 3 hours. For myself, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at BT Boylan. You can follow my work with the Saints News Network over on si.com/NFL. patreon.com/Saints. And that's where you'll find all the work. John Hendricks has already put 2 articles out tonight about draft picks. We're going to have draft analysis from Bob Rose, one of my favorites when it comes to draft time. Bob Rose's analysis of the picks. Myself and Kyle T. Mosley, we're going to have some analysis of our own on the picks, and we can't wait to see you back here tomorrow. Bob, you have a nice one-day vacation, and we'll see you for day 3. For the rest of you, we will see you tomorrow. Big thank you from the Saints News Network. I hope you guys sleep easy because we will do it for ourselves. We'll see you tomorrow. Who dat?